Invincible Mumu. By Han Jung-Wheolya. Chapter 98. Kang Mui. Part 1. So, how is his condition? Jin Hyuk, who brought Haryang to the infirmary, asked of his condition to one of the staff inside. The staff member wiped the sweat from his forehead with a towel and replied, "The most dangerous hurdle has passed. He bled too much, so it is difficult to say when he will wake up." Moilwa, who was behind Jin Hyuk, bit down on her lips, regret weighing heavily in her heart. Had she known this would happen, she would have never asked Haryang to follow Harayan. Haryang's life wouldn't have been in danger if she hadn't. The two of them left the infirmary and sat down on a chair in the hallway. Jin Hyuk then turned to the slightly shocked Moilwa and said, "He will be fine. I shouldn't have asked him to go. At least, I should have asked Mumu to go with him. Then he would have found out too much." Moilwa raised an eyebrow at those bitter words. What a cold guy to speak that way in this kind of situation. Will he wake up safely? He will wake up. Didn't he wear an iron suit on his back so he could survive? Jin Hyuk had seen the protective suit when he took off Haryang's clothes to treat him. Things he had never seen before were also there, showing him enough to trust in his friends will to live through these kinds of situations. But what did Haryang mean? Before losing consciousness, Haryang had managed to write something on the ground. They assumed that the message was something he wanted to tell them. Jade plaque. Assassin, Ilian, N1. What was the jade plaque? Then there were arrows followed by the word Ilian. I still have no idea what he was trying to say. As Moilwa said, it was difficult to understand the meaning of the message Haryang had left behind. What was certain was that he had left it for them. What did he see? Someone walked up to them as the two of them were putting their heads together to figure out their friend's message. I don't know the meaning of jade plaque, but I think I know what he was trying to convey with the second character. Hyung? Sir Jin Sung. The man walking down the hallway in front of them was Jin Hyuk's brother. Jin Hyuk then asked him, "How did it go? Did you catch the culprit?" "No. They escaped me." Jin Sung shook his head with a sad face. Jin Sung had searched the entire area to try and capture the person who had attacked Haryang but could not find a single trace. Things have become difficult. Jin Sung clicked his tongue. It was vague, but it was unfortunate that such an incident happened. He had thought that the case would be quickly concluded, but now another incident that resulted in a student becoming seriously injured happened. As it was something which involved a life, Muyang would definitely use this incident as an excuse to resume the investigation again. He looked at his brother and Moilwa. "I couldn't ask before as the timing didn't seem right, but can you tell me why the child was attacked?" He was curious about the whole thing, and Jin Hyuk briefly told him what had happened. Jin Hyuk had no reason to hide such things from his older brother as he was the person he trusted the most in the world, right behind their mother. Jin Sung, who listened to the story, clicked his tongue. "You did something dangerous. No matter how suspicious you are of a student, you also said that the boy was related to the group who used a drug that we could not identify to drug the students before trying to burn them to death. It is dangerous to step on the enemy's foot without preparation. It is my fault. It's all my responsibility since I..." Moilwa bowed her head. She had been too cautious about what Harayan might have made Mumu do. She wanted to be sure and let Haryang go. "It isn't your fault." Jin Hyuk comforted her. Jin Sung then told him, "Well, the student called Harayan is the most suspicious person of that unknown group." "Right. Then what Haryang left behind has to be something he heard from them." Jin Hyuk nodded his head. He then recalled what Jin Sung said and asked, "What did you mean when you said you knew what the second character meant?" "It's simple." "Simple?" "From my experience investigating many incidents, people on the verge of death and suffering would feel a sense of unfairness and injustice. They would then try to leave behind any information on those who tried to kill them. This means your friend did the same. But why write like that?" If only he wrote the name normally. Now, that would make things easier, but you could see his hand losing strength after he wrote out Jade Plaque. As Jin Sung said, the writing became messy after those words. The strength of Haryang's finger must have weakened. Jin Sung then continued. Usually, what the victims leave behind is concise and as informative as possible. Then the X after? Live. Kill. Perhaps he wanted to write down the characters of to kill but then lost strength. Then he decided to write down the killer's name instead. Ah. It made sense. The second letter could be read as assassin or to kill. Then the person who had tried to kill Haryang was. Idiot. He could have just written the name. Moilwa mumbled with red eyes. The secret of the second character was now unlocked. Now all that was left was the third one with the arrow. Why was the arrow pointing up? Was he trying to point somewhere? The direction Haryang pointed at is the North Heavenly Dorm. Moilwa gritted her teeth and asked. Our dorm? It has to be the dorm building. There is no way he was referring to the sky. I think he was saying that the person was in the dorm. I think the same as Miss Mo. Jin Sung agreed with her. Right? Is it true? Jin Sung explained to Jin Hyuk, who couldn't believe it. So initially, the suspicious student, Haryang, came to the dorm to get information, and they headed towards the forest behind the dorm. If they went there, the chances of the attacker being part of the dorm increase. In the meantime, he also drew an upward-facing arrow from behind the forest. That arrow meant north, so it probably also meant the dorm. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks, right. The problem comes after. Ilian. It was difficult to understand the meaning, then Moilwa asked, wouldn't that mean the culprit was named Ilian and lives in the dorm? Jin Hyuk nodded and agreed, but there were 100 students in the dorm. He wouldn't be able to know all of them, but Haryang would. Jin Sung had a question in his mind. There was no need to draw the arrow for that kind of message. The arrow and the name together made no sense, so it would have been better to just write the name. But since he didn't know the situation, he decided to check for the name first. Look it up once, and if such a name doesn't. Kuong. DRRNG. Before he could finish his sentence, a loud roar filled the air and vibrations were felt all throughout the hallway. The three of them jumped up. What happened? I don't know. We need to go. You two need to guard the infirmary. Infirmary? If the person knows Haryang is alive, another attempt might be made. So wait here until I send the guards to come here. Miss Mo, please stay here till then. With that, Jin Sung hurriedly ran down the hallway. He just wanted to know what this vibration was. Since the person after Haryang could come back to finish the job, he would just take a quick look and return immediately. Cough. Ha, ha. Mumu's hand continued holding the man's head as the man continued to cough. His pale face clearly showed how much pain he must be in. Agent 2 stuck out his tongue at this and called over to Mumu. Young Master Mumu. I will talk to him and find out who is behind him. He was sure that if this continued, the man would just die in Mumu's hands. Before that happened, he had to make sure to get the man to confess everything he knew. At that moment, the man who was coughing opened his mouth. Die, die. Funny. Until you spit out who gave you your orders, you will not. Before he could finish, the man in the guard's uniform was about to bite his tongue. However, Mumu's hand was faster. Quack. He grabbed the man's chin. No. Now. The man could not close his mouth while his chin remained open at a funny angle, thanks to Mumu's intervention. Agent 2 shook his head. It seemed like the interrogation would be quite difficult. You bastard. Those who attempted suicide after failure tended to have a vial in their mouth for a quick death. But those trained to put their lives on the line would do all sorts of things when necessary. Samuhyo, who was detained in the prison, was on the verge of losing his ability to breathe, which made physical interrogation nearly impossible. However, the man wouldn't speak even when asked. Still, acting like this was different. "I am going to hold his mouth tight." Mumu said this as he turned to the man he was holding. At this, Agent 8 approached and sealed his blood points. "Tada tada. If we do this, he won't be able to do much." The unknown person opened his mouth. Agent 8 finished the sealing as Mumu said, "I have 2 things to ask. Leave it to me. Catch Senior Kang Mui." Kang Mui? If it was the Kang Mui he knew, then he was the academy student who was pretty high ranked in the 3rd year. Why did Mumu suddenly want them to take him in? He was puzzled but then noticed the suspicious man's eyes shaking. What? He hadn't panicked when he was first caught, but now he was? And then everything clicked. For a moment, he thought this was a good thing. Mumu then spoke to the suspicious one. "Are you stupid? It doesn't matter whether you speak or not. I came to check the traces that Kang Mui left in there, but they were all gone. I, SOSO and Master Dang came to investigate them and were almost killed by a collapsing building. So who would I suspect? This." The eyes of the man trembled at Mumu's words. This caught Agent 2's eyes. If Mumu was correct, then the student called Kang Mui was also suspicious. It was shocking that the simple-minded Mumu had such sharp insight. If what young Master Mumu said is right, then we need to catch the student called Kang Mui and interrogate him. Agent 2 concluded that Mumu was correct and said, "Right now, mobilize the guards under the deputy, and we will arrest the student Kang." "No. I will do it." The faster, the better." As soon as he said that, Mumu bent his knees. Then the muscles and thighs began to steam again. "What will you do, young master?" "Kwang." Before the words could even finish, 2 pieces of the floor collapsed, and in an instant, Mumu soared into the air. Seeing that, Agent 8 was shocked. Is it true that he hasn't mastered martial arts? It was absurd that he could jump to that height without running, using only the strength in his legs. If he jumped that high, then he would see the entire academy, but he couldn't figure out why he would do that. No. Mumu, who jumped, was staring at a particular spot, and then found him. Saying that, Mumu kicked his legs to the ground again. Pong! And with the sound of the air being torn, the air moved like waves, and Mumu flew towards the northwest. At this sight, Agent 8 asked, "Jay, just now, did young Master Mumu just jump into the air?" Read latest chapters at Wuxiao World. Sight only. Your eyes aren't wrong. With regards to martial arts, the highest level one could achieve was moving in the air. This was called movement in the air, or air steps. But to just use a kick to do that. Was that possible? N1, X, N1, you pay what X Xuan. Chapter 99. Kang Mui. Part 2. Kwang. Rumble. The sound of the building collapsing spread throughout the academy grounds. It's done. Kang Mui hurriedly headed outside, his steps slightly heavy as his face carried a worried expression. Although it had all been planned out, he didn't know when Oh Muyang or anyone else would appear. Did it work? Oh Muyang supported the boy and not him. The fact that the person placed in charge of the imperial family came here made his purpose clear. Are you looking for it too? In order for things to be perfect, he needed the book. No matter how many enemies he had, if he had that, no one would even try to question his claim. However, finding where the book was hidden took a long time. He only had information that it might be either at the Imperial Palace or the Academy, the 2 places that had divided the treasure during that time. They were here before I even got my hands on it. The fact that Oh Muyang had come meant that he had smelled something promising or had already obtained the other half of the book. The former would be annoying, and the latter would be even worse. That would mean that the secret book would be completed in his hands. I need to get it before him. If not, he would be at a disadvantage. Anyway, he had to end it without creating any trouble. Even if things went a bit overkill, it was a priority to get that book. I had it in my hands. Samuhyo had found the way to get it. He had been stopped due to unforeseen incidents, but this was the only chance. I need to see it just once. Unlike Samuhyo, Kang Mui was smart. With just one glance, even the most difficult concepts could be understood by him. Kang Mui looked at the library. If it wasn't for him, things would have happened my way. Mumu. The biggest variable. If he had known this would happen, he would have killed Mumu when they first met in the old building. He had let him go then because he looked talented and might have been useful. That was a mistake. That one moment of interest turned into a tsunami of incidents. If it weren't for Mumu, the Heavenly Martial Arts Academy would have been under pressure from the Imperial Palace and the other martial clans. Not to mention the division between the four great warriors. But all that had resulted from their plans was a rift between two of the four great warriors. That was the only good thing. But what upset him the most was that his efforts had been in vain. The ice flower. It was a stepping stone to receive at least one star this year. While looking for ways to receive a star, he discovered that Dan Baekhyun had a soft spot for the special flowers which could only be grown in her hometown of the North Sea Ice Palace. For that purpose, he had brought the seeds and planted them. Cheeky bastard. He didn't think Mumu would touch them. He thought Mumu was there in the old building just out of curiosity. Thanks to that, everything he had done to collect 7 stars was wasted. If only he had gotten another one, he could have gone into the 3rd basement floor of the library without resorting to this kind of plan. All because of you. If it wasn't for all the fuss happening, he would be even angrier at Mumu. For the moment, while all the attention was focused on the collapsed building, he could hurry and get things done. It is a bit risky, but it's probably better than changing plans again. Change? Yes. Right after we collapse it, the officials and guards will all rush over there. They won't return quickly, so you can make your move. Oh. That was true. Would any of the officials and guards gathered in the yard even think that someone would be aiming for the library? Destroy the building, dispose of a menace and erase any traces. Then use it as a chance to get the secret book too. Liang would need to keep up his act as an official, so he would be forced to head to the collapsed building. Shall I go then? It was unreasonable to go from the front, so going from above was the right call since he could avoid the eyes of any guards left behind. Kang Mui recalled the route of the plan. After I temporarily stopped the mechanism in the 1st basement. Flinch. Kang Mui, who had been thinking of the plan, felt something ominous and raised his head. He could see something that looked like a dot floating in the air. It might not be clear to some eyes, but Kang Mui immediately recognized it. He knew exactly what it was. Mumu. It was Mumu. Kang Mui frowned. The roar and vibration caused by the old research building's collapse had happened, so how was this guy here? Did he fail? Mumu being unharmed meant the plan failed. He didn't understand that if they hadn't entered the building wouldn't have come down, and the probability of the plan failing was also low. Did something go wrong with the plan? As his brain struggled to rationalize a reason, Mumu located Kang Mui's position from the air. No. Did he float that high into the air to find him? It was difficult to find something when your field of view became large instantly. This was the truth for even the most skilled of people. But Mumu was able to do it almost immediately. Something went wrong. Well, nothing can be done. Before he comes. Pang. A wave formed in the air, alongside the roaring sound of it being ripped apart. Mumu flew to him with tremendous speed. And Kwang. He flew in like a shooting star and landed. The impact of his landing was so great that the ground was crushed into pieces. Kang Mui looked at him. Did he use the void movement? This was beyond his expectations. If not for that, it would be impossible for Mumu to fly through the air and arrive here in an instant. Swish. What is this? All of Mumu's muscles looked swollen. As if that wasn't enough, his current frame was much larger than an average adult's, and his skin was gray as steam escaped from it. This was too strange. Then does it mean that Master Hio's words weren't lies? He had been warned about Mumu, but he hadn't believed it as he had crossed paths with Mumu once before in the old research building. Seeing the sight in front of him now, he could understand why Master Hio had suffered. Kang Mui's gaze fell on the bands on Mumu's ankles and wrists. As expected, those items were on him. Such a chance wouldn't have come normally. When he saw those bands, he remembered Master Hio's words. Since you dealt with him, you must have thought about a way to go against him, right? You need to neutralize those bands on him or deal with him before he uses them. That was what he said. Even if he wanted to deal with Mumu before he used those bands, Mumu now looked like he was fully ready to fight. So the second option is immediately out. Then the only way would be to neutralize it. Break it. No one ever said that those bands could not be broken. Anything in the world would decay with time. Therefore these things could also be destroyed. But before that, you look angry. At Kang Mui's question, Mumu stood up. I will be straight with you. Straight? Are you on the same team as them? What are you talking about? The people who set fire to the dorms, the person who killed Elder Hang Yun inside the library, and those who tried to frame Hong Hai Ryan. At those words, Kang Mui replied. I don't know what you are talking about. Mumu scratched his head and then said. Is that so? Then I will change the question, why did you erase the traces inside the basement in the research building? And why did you destroy it? At this, Kang Mui waved his hand. Building? Old research one? Why are you asking me all that? I just told you I don't understand why you are asking me this. The same. The same? Master Samuhyo gave me the same answer as you but then opened his mouth when I gave him a good beating. At Mumu's words, Kang Mui's eyes turned sharp. He had tried to avoid this, but Mumu kept riling him up. After defeating Master Hio, his arrogance seemed to have risen. You are more reckless than you look. Are you proud of your own strength? Not reckless. It is said that martial arts are difficult to learn all at once, but inside Senior, there seems to be many of them. Many? Mumu's eyes didn't feel that Kang Mui's energy was of a singular type. There was a wide variety of colors inside. One even felt similar to the energy he felt from Dan Baekhyun. Usually, it should only be one or two, but the fact that you have many shows that you learned many kinds of martial arts, right? At Mumu's words, Kang Mui frowned. This guy was becoming more and more annoying. He didn't know why, but he kept talking to him. You are annoying. I see. I should have killed you that time. Whoa. A sharp blue light shone from Kang Mui's hands. It was none other than a strong type of energy. The fact that he could even form this type of energy using his bare hands meant that Kang Mui was at a very high level. And that wasn't the end. Clench. The seam of the clothes around Kang Mui's muscles was torn as they bulged outwards. They looked similar to Mumu's own muscles now. And Mumu's eyes shone. You didn't think you were the only one who could manipulate muscles, right? I am the one who has mastered all kinds of martial arts. Kang Mui had learned most of the martial arts on the first and second floor of the library as well as those from the first hidden room. The body's strength could be created in its best form through the contraction and relaxation of muscles. A powerful single hit. This was not something he wanted to show off. However, he wouldn't be careless in front of this boy who had spoiled so many things for him. I will show you the true power of this attack. Swish. Kang Mui's body became blurry as he moved. And in an instant, he was in front of Mumu. Pang! With the sound of ripping air, Kang Mui rushed in to hit Mumu in the chest. It was so swift that his fist reached Mumu's chest before the latter could even react. Kwang! An all-powerful attack to destroy everything. That moment it touched Mumu's chest, a huge roar filled the air. Kang Mui smiled. To be defeated by the kind of strength you love so much. As his lips curled up into a smile, they suddenly stopped. He was the one who was powerful and had unified both types of energy in his attack on Mumu's chest. It was the best attack for both internal and external damage. But... swish! Only a hint of steam escaped Mumu's chest as it remained unscathed. You? What the hell was this body? Mumu, who was just standing still, said to Kang Mui. Disappointing. What? I regret letting you even do this. After saying that, Mumu slammed his palm onto Kang Mui's head. Quack. Quaong. With that simple attack, the floor below him shattered, and Kang Mui's body dug into the ground as if he had been struck by a hammer. Chapter 100. Kang Mui. Part 3. Noik Bong was the head of one of the Imperial Palace's 3 hidden units and an inspector. He was someone who didn't get shaken easily. Although he was injured, his dantian didn't get destroyed. That man is such a monster. It was a shock that he was hiding his martial arts. However, the deep and profound energy that he had was so difficult for him to comprehend. If he is at that level, he can be a commander. The Imperial Palace had 5 groups under it. The commanders were heads of the 5 groups and were not inferior to the prominent clans in Murim. There were only 2 people above them. One was the commander-in-chief, and now Noik Bong felt the same intimidating aura from Omuyang. Damn it. Because of this, he was too terrified to say anything. The Imperial Palace had given 3 orders to his hidden group. The first was to understand the Academy's level and shake the institution through the investigation. That was the main reason for them coming here. The second order was to obstruct any investigation being done by Eugene Sung, who was a graduate here. This sabotage would establish that the Imperial Palace should not hire people who graduated from the Academy. And the third. I heard that the one who looks after the library's basement had died in this incident. That is a good thing. Search for anything you can find in it under the pretext of investigation. Martial arts? Rumor has it that there is something there about the heavenly martial arts classics. It is known to contain the true essence of martial arts. Check if that is true. True? If it is the essence of martial arts in the world, it is a suitable item for the Imperial Palace. Be sure to bring it back. Noik Bong could not overcome the pressure he felt from Omuyang and could not move. Strictly speaking, this was a felony for failing to do the task he was assigned, so he was confused about what to do. But the fortunate thing was... Right. Okay. You have been given quite a challenging task. Okay. After finding out the mission he was given, Omuyang just left the room as if he was done talking. This was something he could not understand. He was terrified that the man would reveal why he had come. And he could be killed too. What could his purpose be? That was something he was curious about. Flinch. Noik Bong felt something strange and touched his cheek. It was the place where Mumu slapped him, a bruise that had begun to swell out. But... bulge. Something felt strange. He touched his cheek as if it was a foreign body, but then he felt his blood vessels twitch. He wasn't conscious of it until a moment ago, but he couldn't control the sensation anymore as something felt as if it was constantly twitching. Why so suddenly? At that moment, Noik Bong recalled what Omuyang said before leaving. Your cheek looks like a mess. After that, he touched his cheek several times. After being hit by Mumu, the pain was so severe that he couldn't even feel anything, and the infirmary head gave him something to ease the pain. Well, take a good rest. And Omuyang left the room saying that. Recalling that, Noik Bong felt scared. Omuyang didn't refer to the wound, and his words telling to rest probably meant, forever. Damn it, quack. Papapapak. Quack. Noik Bong collapsed onto the bed as the veins on his cheek and forehead burst. When the guard stationed at the door entered the room, they didn't seem too shocked at the gruesome sight. Instead, after confirming his death, one of them smiled strangely and ran out of the room. Quang. Quack. Kang Mui's body, which had been hit by Mumu's palm, dug into the floor as if it was hammered in. It had seemed like a light hit, but it was so powerful that he was shaken. Kang Mui knew this. You? This man had strength that surpassed the martial arts he had learned. After experiencing this, he realized why Master Hio was not an opponent for Mumu. Complicated feelings ran through Kang Mui. I can try other things, but... He wasn't sure. Instead, using his hidden techniques in this situation might have the opposite effect. He wasn't sure he could even deal with this monster if he used them, and his plans could go awry. Should I just bear it? As he contemplated what to do, Mumu grabbed him by the head and pulled him out of the floor. Kang Mui took the chance to launch a jab at Mumu. Of course, it was backed with powerful energy. Puck. Instead of breaking Mumu's neck, it only resulted in a hurt foot for Kang Mui. How the hell did he have a body which was so powerful that nothing seemed to work on him? He couldn't understand it. Mumu said to him in a dry voice. You are stronger than I thought. Mumu had decided to hit Kang Mui to break his bones but not to kill him. Seeing that he could still launch a counterattack, however, it seemed like Kang Mui wasn't as hurt as Mumu wanted. Mumu's guess was correct. For defense, I use energy all around my body. Kang Mui had made sure to defend his body just in case he became stuck. If it wasn't for that, his head would have shattered. To look down. Before he could finish his words, Mumu slapped him in the stomach with his palm. Quack. As a result, Kang Mui's body bounced back, and he fell down in great pain. Quack quack wang. Cough. Kang Mui, who had fallen to one knee, coughed out blood. Even though he protected his abdomen the same way, the destructive force of the hit was too much and inflicted internal injuries. This was unimaginable. Step. Let's increase the intensity little by little. Swish. Mumu, who was approaching with steam coming out of his body, looked like a war god. The oppressive feeling Kang Mui felt was overbearing. What the hell is this guy? His entire existence made no sense. He defied the laws of martial arts. Some Yuhio said that it might be the power of Mumu's items, but Kang Mui had other thoughts. He didn't know the specifics of those items, but there was no way they could bring about such power. That was because there was a price for every item. And such a tremendous item would have a massive impact on the body. Hadn't he also paid the price to use it? Something is there. Kang Mui thought there was something about Mumu. This strength was inexplicable and could not be explained by just muscle training. Then Mumu said to Kang Mui, "How long do I have to hit you before you open your mouth?" At that, Kang Mui snorted and said, "Ha ha ha, you won't get to know anything. You will speak." As soon as he said that, Mumu reached out again. Kang Mui barely managed to avoid Mumu's hand by swiftly moving to his side and then swung his hand to Mumu's chest. First strong punch, spiral destruction palm. Pong. The energy on Kang Mui's attack whirled around sharply and dug into Mumu's chest, causing him to get pushed back slightly. Kang Mui wasn't too surprised by the result. It should have been powerful enough to destroy even a rock the size of a mansion. But Mumu was just pushed back a tiny bit. Did your body really turn into the unbreakable diamond state? Mumu tilted his head at the question and said, "Even if I don't know what it is, anyone can reach this if they train their muscles enough." Bulge. Mumu placed a bit of strength on his chest muscles, which moved. Was he messing around now? If one trained their muscles, they'd turn out like this? At that moment, something caught Kang Mui's eyes. It was the most absurd thing. It was the jade plaque hanging around his neck. The unusual pattern with two lines on a triangle. Kang Mui's eyes betrayed his shock as he said, "You. Are you ready to talk now? How do you have it?" It? At those words, Mumu looked at where Kang Mui's eyes were drawn. His jade plaque. Mumu asked, "Do you know anything about this jade plaque?" Kang Mui frowned at the question. That was what he wanted to ask. He knew all the faces of the people with the jade plaque, but this was his first time seeing this face. Mumu's eyes shone at this. It was the first time he had met someone who knew about this. Do you know what this is? At Mumu's question, Kang Mui frowned. Does he not know who I am? Without any information, Mumu had the jade plaque and shouldn't be asking such a question, but this was also suspicious. How could a guy he had never seen before have that jade plaque? Do you not know me? I don't know. Do we know each other? If there is something, can you tell me what it is? Kang Mui was sure that Mumu knew nothing about the jade plaque. Considering that he had such a strong power, he couldn't have gotten the jade by chance. Another one. A new owner of the jade plaque appeared. Mumu then clenched his fists. In case you do not know what this is, and you said it to get out of the situation. Shoo. Before Mumu could even finish his words, Kang Mui pulled something out. It was the same jade plaque with the same pattern. Mumu saw this and became shocked. Saw me? At Mumu's reaction, Kang Mui smiled. Until recently, he had thought that this guy was just an annoyance. But where else can you find this kind of luck where another jade plaque holder appeared without knowing what it was? Tada tada. Good. At the same time, a crowd was coming here due to their fight. His original purpose had been to get into the library, but Mumu's appearance had made it difficult. But if he, too, had the same jade plaque, the situation was different. Kang Mui then told Mumu. Now that you've seen it, you must know we aren't strangers, right? Not strangers? I want to talk, but if we keep fighting here, we won't be able to do anything. Why? Are you asking because you don't know? Thanks to you, both of us are in danger. Danger? Well, I don't even know what you thought, so I don't know what happened, but I am glad about one thing. I got to see the plaque. At these words, Mumu was convinced that Kang Mui knew something about him. There had to be someone who knew the secret of his birth and what he was looking for. Kang Mui held his hand to Mumu and said, Do you want to know the secret of the jade plaque? Take my hand, and I'll tell you. Take your hand? As you may have noticed, the people of the academy will arrive soon. We might have to indulge in violence, and if you want a way out, we must move. He thought Mumu would understand if he said it like that. Once they get out of this situation, he can try to make Mumu his own. With the jade plaque, he would listen to Kang Mui to know its use. We don't have time. Kang Mui held his hand out, his expression clearly asking Mumu to decide quickly. After a moment's hesitation, Mumu approached him and took his hand. Kang Mui said, A good choice. First of all, if we leave the place, the jade. Clench. Quack. Before his words could even finish, Kang Mui's body twisted in pain. Mumu looked at him and scratched his head. I was curious about it, but you kept dragging things out, thinking I wouldn't notice. Chapter 101. Kang Mui. Part 4. Heavenly Martial Arts Academy. Reception office in the main hall. The headmaster looked at Oh Muyang with a stiff face. It was Du Zhangmiang who had thought that it would not matter if there was an imperial officer in the academy. There would be no reason for the palace to intervene because they had solved the case since Sam Yuhio had confessed to everything after Mumu caught him. However, unexpected words came out of Oh Muyang's mouth. You must have been through a lot. After the main office's investigation, it seems like the culprit is indeed Sam Yuhio. Wasn't that because the palace had sympathized with the academy? You really do deserve to be called the best academic institution in the land. You saying that gives us such relief, so would you like to close the case and return to the palace? I cannot do that. We have to move the criminal away right now. The criminal? What? Transfer the criminal? As the headmaster was shocked by those words, Oh Muyang put his hands together and said, I will personally let the main office and the emperor know that you did your duties correctly. Unless I heard your words wrong, it sounded as if you were talking about taking the criminal into your custody? You didn't hear me wrong then. You heard me right. Huh. The headmaster was shocked. Neither he nor the officials were the ones who had caught the culprit. Indeed, the biggest victims of this case were the students who could have lost their lives. Logically then, the academy should have the right to punish the perpetrators. The headmaster took a deep breath and spoke in a soft voice. This should be left in our hands. Although the culprit did confess, he is clearly a warrior of Murum, and this incident took place inside the academy. Therefore, the right to punish the crime is in the academy's hands. It was an obvious refusal. At that, Muyang stroked his beard and said, "So you think that way? I don't think we cooperated with you with other thoughts. We have been open with you, so the execution of the culprit has to be in our hands." Ha ha ha. Muyang, smiling widely, pulled something out of his sleeves. It was a scroll sealed with golden thread. Du Zhangmiang's eyes trembled as he saw the scroll. This letter is under the Emperor, His Majesty's name. Wang Zhen. He was the younger brother of the current emperor. Unlike others who just received empty titles, Wang Zhen was someone who had authority over a fortress in the Sichuan province. Even though he was officially just a vassal, he was the official ruler of that region and someone trusted by the current emperor. It was unexpected that his name would be mentioned here. It is the supreme command from His Majesty Wang Zhen to transport the culprit to the palace. Du Zhangmiang frowned. Are you saying His Majesty Wang Zhen's order is the emperor's order? Why do you think so? Then how could you? First, it is absurd to say that only the academy has the right to execute the punishment. There are children of officials here, too, headmaster. They were always using this as an excuse. Du Zhangmiang's expression darkened. To say that is the first reason means there is a second too. What is that? The office wanted to meet with the headmaster exclusively to keep this confidential. Confidential? In this academy is a noble county princess of Our Majesty Wang Zhen's family. For a moment, the headmaster was speechless. Ordinarily, the title of county princess was given to women who were the children of the imperial family. And with Wang Zhen being an ally to the emperor, the title was easily passed down to his side too. But why was such a person in their academy in the first place? How? That is why I said it was confidential. His Majesty allowed her to enroll in this academy because he cares for her. This is a fact that is unknown even to the palace. Of course, they didn't know. A family member of the emperor enrolling in a martial arts academy? Obviously, no one knew. This was something that could not be told to anyone at all. His Majesty was quite angry about this. However, since this was something which couldn't be said publicly, I was asked to handle this separately. Even the headmaster couldn't hide his shock. That man, who was a direct vassal of the emperor, was involved in this matter. If this was the case, then there was no way he could refuse anymore. To refuse Wang Zhen would mean that he needed to prepare for war. A county princess. He did know that Wang Zhen was an eccentric man who was difficult to understand despite belonging to the royal family. However, he didn't foresee that a child of that man would be sent here without the knowledge of the imperial palace. If her life was at stake, he couldn't refuse this. Will you reject the order? How can I do that? Although the issue of punishing criminals was also significant, it was impossible to overrule the imperial family. I knew the headmaster would make a good choice. The headmaster clicked his tongue at this. No wonder this man was sent here. His Majesty also hopes the lady would return home due to the incident. Right. That was natural. Even if they did manage to prevent any loss, from Wang Zhen's point of view, it would be impossible to entrust his child to the academy anymore. I think I should proceed with His Majesty's order. Right. If I do, I will have to know her identity. I was told she is here right now under the name of a disciple from Sichuan's Yue sect. That child. Somehow, she did have a strange dignity compared to the other children. The headmaster immediately knew that child's real identity because he had been paying attention to her. I see. I will call her Kwang. Rumble. Before the words could even finish, a roar could be heard, and the vibration shook the table. At this, the headmaster was forced to stand up. What is this sound? I think we should go. If another incident occurred in the academy, I should be coming. The headmaster sighed. What else could he do? Clench. Quack. Mumu's tremendous gripping power crushed all the bones in Kang Mui's fingers, making him scream and twist his body in pain. I am curious about it, but just because I have a calm father doesn't mean that I like being dragged around. Kang Mui was shocked by Mumu's words. Would a guy who wanted to know the meaning behind the jade plaque act like this? Quack, quack, you. Same side? So many conditions. Kang Mui clenched his teeth at those words. His strength, manner of speaking, and actions had all looked simple, so he thought he could use Mumu. Instead, this boy was proving to be more annoying than he thought. He only looked simple, but nothing else about him was simple. You said people will come. Let them come. Then we'll deal with it. Kang Mui grunted. This guy was being too bold. Was this guy really taking the lead here? Kang Mui looked at Mumu and said, Ha, you, with strength, let's see. He, too, had pride. Even if he died, he had no intention of succumbing to Mumu. Then it cannot be helped. Sleep. What? Shoo. Mumu brought his thumb and middle finger to Kang Mui's forehead and held them there. Kang Mui frowned. A forehead flick? Mumu snapped his fingers. Snap. Quack. At that moment, Kang Mui felt like he would pass out from the pain. Mumu looked down at Kang Mui, who had fainted, and scratched his own forehead. Looking at the atmosphere, it was unlikely that Kang Mui would speak now. If he had only discovered that this man was one of the enemies, he would have continued beating him up. If the mouth was the only thing that needed to work, leaving him a cripple wasn't a bad option. However, Kang Mui knew something about the jade plaque, which was related to his birth. What if my parents were bad people too? Mumu thought as such. Seeing how Kang Mui was like this, he couldn't think of any other possibility. Wouldn't that mean he might end up on the same side as villains? He might even end up destroying everyone in the academy. With those thoughts in his head, Mumu felt a strange hesitation for the first time. My head hurts. If there was some connection, were his parents the villains? His mind was filled with complicated thoughts as Mumu stared at the fainted Kang Mui. He then began searching his arms. He took out the jade plaque that Kang Mui had. The front had the same pattern as his plaque, but Mui? On the back of Kang Mui's plaque were the words Mui, with the same character of Mu in his name. Mumu. It was written the same way as his. Seeing that the name on the jade plaque was different, but the first character was the same, Mumu knew there had to be a connection. However, it was challenging to find precisely what it was. Should I force him to speak out? Mumu's questions about the name would not be resolved unless Kang Mui decided to speak directly. While he was considering this, people of the academy began arriving at where Mumu was. Mumu placed his necklace back on himself and put Kang Mui's in his pocket. And then he turned the dials to 8. RRNG. Not just the guards, but Tang Soso, Master Dan Baekhyun, the officials, and the headmaster had also come. Mumu? It was Eugene Sung, who was Mumu's big stepbrother. Except for Tang Soso and Dan Baekhyun, the timing of everyone's appearance was a bit different. The sound of the collapsed building must have also led them to search the library, which was close by. The headmaster, a bit shocked, asked Mumu. Mumu. What happened? He had arrived here after hearing a series of sounds and witnessing what looked like the aftermath of a serious fight. No, was it even violent? Looking at Kang Mui's unconscious form, that was most likely what had happened. At this lull, Tang Soso took the initiative and said, Headmaster. I am Tang Soso, a second-year student. I am afraid there is a misunderstanding. Student Mumu was trying to catch the culprit behind the murder of student Young Chun from a few days ago. Culprit? What do you mean? Do you mean that student Kang Mui is related to it? Yes. Tang Soso looked over at Dan Baekhyun. Understanding what Soso was aiming for, Dan Baekhyun nodded and said, "What student Soso said is correct. The old research building had collapsed while I was looking for the traces left behind by student Kang Mui, who I had suspicions of due to a student's report. Fortunately, we escaped, and student Mumu came out here to make sure they wouldn't cover up the evidence." Tang Soso clicked her tongue at this explanation. It was certainly difficult to ignore this woman's experience as a teacher when she could speak much better than her. Right. The headmaster frowned at these reports. What did this mean? Are they saying that they had found the true culprit behind the murder? At that exact moment, Oh Muyang clicked his tongue. Because of just one guy, the entire academy turns upside down. Oh Muyang looked at Mumu. He definitely felt hatred for this student down to his core. At first, he had thought that Mumu would be a minor nuisance, but not just surviving the collapsed building, he had also managed to catch on to Kang Mui. A passionate person? Or animal instincts? Whatever he was annoying. TCH. Oh Muyang looked at Kang Mui, who had fainted. To think that this guy was considered one of the most intelligent of the jade plaque holders. And he got taken down by someone called Mumu. It isn't good to deal with annoying enemies with force alone. I will teach that to you this time.